Hi, today I have a reading from A Course in Miracles. So this is Chapter 7, The Gifts of the Kingdom, Section 5, Healing and the Changelessness of Mind. Okay, Paragraph 1. The body is nothing more than a framework for developing abilities, which is quite apart from what they are used for. That is a decision. The effects of the ego's decision in this matter are so apparent that they need no elaboration. But the Holy Spirit's decision to use the body only for communication has such a direct connection with healing that it does need clarification. The unhealed healer obviously does not understand his own vocation. And the unhealed healer would be anyone who... What do we want to say? The healed healer is an abstraction at the end of time, because if I felt any disquiet at all today, and I did, I'm an unhealed healer. I had a moment where I was turned away from what we are, and that means I still want to see what we are not. So we're all walking each other home, and we're all in this process of remembering healing and allowing healing and sharing healing. Okay, so what stood out for me here is the body is nothing more than a framework for developing abilities, which is quite apart from what they are used for. Okay, so what's the body? It's this framework for developing abilities. And who can be put in charge of what abilities are developed? That would be spirit. Who can be put in charge of how the abilities are developed and to what extent and how they're used? That would be spirit again, because trying to be in charge of it will bring on the feeling of anxiety and unrest, and then we'll know I'm turned away from what we are together. I can turn back toward it. The body is nothing more than a framework for developing abilities, which are quite apart from what they are used for. So when we're looking at another body over there, we can see, well, it's just a framework for spirit in which spirit can develop abilities and use those abilities. And I don't have to judge anything positively or negatively. I can just know everything we made originally for the nightmare can be used equally and very helpfully by what we actually are together, by spirit. Okay, paragraph 2. Only minds communicate. Since the ego cannot obliterate the impulse to communicate because it is also the impulse to create, it can only teach you that the body can both communicate and create, and therefore does not need the mind. The ego thus tries to teach you that the body can act like the mind and is therefore self-sufficient. That's why we get caught up in these stories about bodies, because we have been convinced. Yet we have learned that behavior is not the level for either teaching or learning, since you can act in accordance with what you do not believe. To do this, however, will weaken you as a teacher and a learner, because, as has been repeatedly emphasized, you teach what you do believe. An inconsistent lesson will be poorly taught and poorly learned. And again, before we start criticizing ourselves and others for poorness of learning or teaching, just remember the one who has been well taught and well learned is an abstraction at the end of time. If any one of us heals completely, we instantaneously share that healing with everyone, with no exception. So these are judgmental words. Why? Because all of language is judgmental. It was made for the nightmare we wanted, but it can still be used to lead us through and out of the nightmare. If you teach both sickness and healing, you are both a poor teacher and a poor learner. All of us are teaching both sickness and healing until one of us totally lets it go and only teaches healing for a moment, and then all the belief in sickness is gone for everyone. So again, don't beat yourself or anybody up with the concept of a poor teacher and a poor learner. This is just to direct us and guide us when we're facing the wrong direction, to help us simply turn the other way. Okay, so since the ego cannot, this is what stood out for me, cannot obliterate the impulse to communicate, because it is also the impulse to create. So our impulse to communicate is our impulse to create. It can only teach you that the body can both communicate and create, and therefore does not need the mind. So the body is the drama being enacted, and we can put all of the drama, including the perception of all the bodies, in Holy Spirit's hands. Actual creation is not of time and space, it's prior to and or beyond time and space. Actual communication is not limited by the perception of time and space, and communication is ongoing and creation is ongoing. And what we're witnessing to here in our dream is a making. But so making versus creating is a way to use language to point towards something that is real, creation, the extension of love forever, and something that is unreal, what we've made here in our nightmare. So where do I want to go with this? Since the ego cannot obliterate the impulse to communicate, because it is also the impulse to create, it can only teach you that the body can both communicate and create. So the ego is telling you the body's the way to go. Your body, under your soul direction alone, can communicate and create. And you're in charge of how well this body, or you, what you consider to be you, communicates and creates. And you can call your separate self a success or a failure based on a whole series of judgments. Okay, so the ego can only teach you that the body can both communicate and create, and therefore does not need the mind. We are the mind, we're not the body, but the body is a tool we made, and spirit can use it. Okay, let's see. Paragraph 3. Healing is the one ability everyone can develop and must develop if he is to be healed. Healing is the Holy Spirit's form of communication in this world, and the only one he accepts. He recognizes no other because he does not accept the ego's confusion of mind and body. Minds can communicate, but they cannot hurt. And if we seem to see sick bodies that don't appear to be healed, either ours or someone else's, again, there's nothing to worry about there, and we don't do this comparative healing thing like, well, that one over there appears healed, so this one has an ability that another one doesn't have. We all share, and as we seem to gain and use abilities, we share all that we have with all of us, and all of us, I'm just seeing like this upswelling, like all of us share all our gifts with everybody, and everybody starts to remember and gain access to spirit flowing through them and how they can allow that. And that's how that works. It's not like you point to somebody over there and say what a much better job they're doing of becoming a healer than you are, because then we're in comparison, which is just what the ego is providing for us. The ego is providing for us every thought of comparison, and they're always invalid. So just so we don't go down a wrong pathway there. Okay, minds can communicate, but they cannot hurt. The body in the service of the ego can hurt other bodies, but this cannot occur unless the body has already been confused with the mind. This situation too can be used either for healing or for magic. But you must remember that magic always involves, and magic is like the orientation toward seeing and getting and enacting what a separate ego tells you it wants, instead of tuning into Holy Spirit and just putting Spirit in charge of everything. So when I'm focused on the one end of things, I'm focused on magic, on making things happen. And when I'm focused on the other thing, I just trust totally in Spirit. And again, trusting totally in Spirit is an abstraction at the end of time. We cannot compare how much one trusts in Spirit as opposed to how much another trusts in Spirit. That's an impossibility. So just something to keep in mind. Where was I? But you must remember that magic always involves the belief that healing is harmful. So when I'm engaged in magic, or trying to pursue the goals of the ego that thinks it's alone, I'm turned away from healing. And I'm covering up the light that's here to bring healing to all of us. This belief is its totally insane premise, and so it proceeds accordingly. So what stands out here is minds can communicate, but they cannot hurt. So when we go within, and we get quiet and we relax, and we're in the place of union and awareness, our minds are in communication there. There's where our minds are in communication. At home, where nothing has ever been truly disturbed, our minds are in communication. And we can turn back in that direction many times a day. When we're turned back in the direction of where our actual mind is just one mind and it's unified and we cannot hurt each other, we're oriented in the right way. When we're turned outward thinking that we have separate minds and that we are these bodies, then we can witness all the hurt that seems to be being enacted here. So minds can communicate, but they cannot hurt. So we need to focus. We learn to focus consistently, and we come to value focusing consistently on this harmful place within us. And did I say harmful? There we go. There's the influence of ego on this harmless place within us. And as we learn to focus there and rest there, we see it in everybody else. We remember more easily and more quickly that it's there, and that this harmless place in them is their true nature, and it's a true nature we all share together. And the more we're able to rest here and focus on that and know the value of focusing on that, the more what we see in our world reflects that back to us, this harmlessness. And it is truly up to us what we see, and we can take responsibility for how we feel and how we're experiencing. Okay. And when I say we can take responsibility, I mean as the beings we are. It doesn't mean that we take personal responsibility as a person and we blame any person, our separate person, or somebody else's separate person. I mean as the being you are, you take responsibility. Okay. Paragraph 4. Healing only strengthens. Magic always tries to weaken. Healing perceives nothing in the healer that everyone else does not share with him. That's the safest way. Magic always sees something, quote, special in the healer, which he believes he can offer as a gift to someone who does not have it. He may believe that the gift comes from God to him, but it is quite evident that he does not understand God if he thinks he has something that others lack. So what stands out here is healing perceives, why do I keep saying that? Nothing in the healer that everyone else does not share with him. And I've learned this is my safety. This is my sanity. Let me look toward within me the thing that connects me to everyone. And let me see within everyone the very same thing I see within me. Let me stay in this equal place. Let me see the truth of us. Let me see our shared innocence. Let me see our shared worthiness. And whatever gifts or abilities any of us seem to be displaying separately, let me not attempt to judge those positively or negatively or manipulate them in any way. There is a harmonic holy will here for all of us, guiding all of us, and let me prioritize focusing on that and flowing with that. And then we come to learn this is my happiness. When I'm flowing with this is my happiness. So I don't need anything to puff up or support my idea of a separate self. Healing perceives nothing in the healer that everyone else does not share with him. And this is the same for the idea of sickness. So if there's an apparently healthy person and an apparently sick person, as we look inward, toward each other, toward what is true and real within each of us. There is no sickness in either place. In the mind we share, where there's true communication, there is no sickness. And we can both recognize that, even if one body appears to be healthy and one body appears to be unhealthy. What we can look toward is what is the same in this, and this in both of us, and this is our strength. Okay, paragraph 5, the Holy Spirit does not work by chance, and healing that is of Him always works. Unless the healer always heals by Him, the results will vary. Yet healing itself is consistent, since only consistency is conflict-free, and only the conflict-free are whole. By accepting exceptions and acknowledging that He can sometimes heal and sometimes not, the healer is obviously accepting inconsistency. He is therefore in conflict and is teaching conflict. Again, not teaching conflict, I'm saying this for me, is an abstraction at the end of time. So if I make the mistake of picking out people, myself included, and saying, I either do or do not teach conflict, and that guy over there is different, and that guy either does or does not teach conflict, I'm barking up the wrong tree. The teacher who does not teach conflict is an abstraction at the end of time, meaning when we finally stop, when one of us stops teaching conflict entirely, the nightmare's over for everyone. And so we're all walking each other home. Okay, I lost my place. Give me a minute. Okay, there it is. He is therefore in conflict and is teaching conflict. Can anything of God not be for all and for always? Love is incapable of any exceptions. Only if there is fear does the idea of exception seem to be meaningful. Exceptions are fearful because they are made by fear. The fearful healer is a contradiction in terms, and is therefore a concept that only a conflicted mind could possibly perceive as meaningful. So exceptions are fearful because they are made by fear. When I notice that I don't feel good, I'm making an exception in some way. I am leaving somebody apart from God's grace. I am leaving somebody outside of the peace we all are. I am leaving someone or something, maybe it's me, maybe it seems to be multiple of us, outside of the healing that's here for all of us right now. Outside of the strength and worthiness and innocence that are truly ours and truly shared. So I don't need to make exceptions. Exceptions are fearful because they're made by fear, and that's why noticing how we feel is so important, because that's the signal to reorient. How I feel, feeling bad in any way, it's always a form of fear, and feeling bad in any way just tells me to refocus. It's a very simple directive. It doesn't mean that anything has gone wrong. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with that being over there. The person on top of it, the ego is going to find a lot of positive and negative things to say about that person. But if I don't feel good, it doesn't mean that anything is wrong with that being over there. All is right with our true being that we share, and I just need to refocus on it. Okay. Paragraph 6. Fear does not gladden. Healing does. Fear always makes exceptions. Healing never does. Fear produces dissociation because it induces separation. Healing always produces harmony because it proceeds from integration. It is predictable because it can be counted on. Everything that is of God can be counted on because everything of God is wholly real. Healing can be counted on because it is inspired by His voice and is in accord with His laws. Yet if healing is consistent, it cannot be inconsistently understood. Understanding means consistency because God means consistency. Since that is His meaning, it is also yours. Your meaning cannot be out of accord with His because your whole meaning and your only meaning comes from His and is like His. God cannot be out of accord with Himself, and you cannot be out of accord with Him. You cannot separate yourself, capital S self, our shared self, from your Creator, who created you by sharing His being with you. So God cannot be out of accord with Himself, and you cannot be out of accord with Him. When I don't feel good, when I feel out of accord, it is the result of what I have been imagining, time and space, and believing what I'm perceiving is real. But in reality, God cannot be out of accord with Himself, and I cannot be out of accord with Him. Or if I'm looking over at you, or someone I would call else, God cannot be out of accord with Himself, and that one over there, or you, cannot be out of accord with Him. That's impossible. So remembering what's impossible, we're able to focus on what is. We all are in full accord with God right now. We're held in harmony right now. And this is prior to and beyond, and not subject to any perceived limits of time or space. What's true is true now and is not subject to any limits of time or space. So God cannot be out of accord with Himself, and you cannot be out of accord with Him. So when I don't feel good, I have started to pretend again that I can be out of accord with God. I can venture off by myself and have a misadventure. I can leave harmony and experience something out of accord with harmony. That's all a pretending. All of time and space has to be a pretending, because lack of accord with what is truly here with God is not possible. But because we have a powerful mind, we can imagine it, and that's what we've been up to. Okay, paragraph 7. The unhealed healer wants gratitude from his brothers. We've all been there. We've all wanted attention, recognition, things of this world, an inpouring toward our separate self, something to worship our separate self, right? We've all been there. But he is not grateful to them. That is because he thinks he is giving something to them and is not receiving something equally desirable in return. We've all been there. His teaching is limited because he is learning so little. His healing lesson is limited by his own ingratitude, which is a lesson in sickness. True learning is constant and so vital in its power for change that a son of God can recognize his power in one instant and change the world in the next. And that is what happens for us. We're all walking each other home, and the instant only one of us recognizes their power, then that changes the world for everyone. That is because by changing his mind, he has changed the most powerful device that was ever given him for change. This in no way contradicts the changelessness of mind as God created it, but you think that you have changed it as long as you learn through the ego. This places you in a position of needing to learn a lesson that seems contradictory. You must learn to change your mind about your mind. Only by this can you learn that it is changeless. So true learning is constant and so vital in its power for change that a son of God can recognize his power in one instant and change the world in the next. So we don't have to effort or struggle from the ego perspective to change the world, from the perspective of being a separate person and it needing to make up for some wrong that has been done, and to engage in this constant struggle as a person to do right. Because what's actually happening is that once we recognize the true power we have, not the power for destruction, which we made up, which we've been imagining, but the power of love, the world changes to reflect that. And that's what we're all working toward together, that full recognition of the power of love we share. And that's what changes our perception of the world. True learning is constant and so vital in its power for change that a son of God can recognize his power in one instant and change the world in the next. So as our faith develops, when we feel bad, we know we have to turn back within toward this vital power. And it's only the power for good. It's only a benign power that we all share and that's alive in everyone and everything, and just turn toward it and put it in charge. Paragraph 8. When you heal, that is exactly what you are learning. You are recognizing the changeless mind in your brother by realizing that he could not have changed his mind. That is how you perceive the Holy Spirit in him. It is only the Holy Spirit in him that never changes his mind. He himself may think he can, or he would not perceive himself as sick. He therefore does not know what his self, capital S, shared self, true self, is. If you see only the changeless in him, you have not really changed him. By changing your mind about his for him, you help him undo the change his ego thinks it has made in him. So no change has been made in us. We just believe a change has been made in us. Okay, there we go. You are recognizing the changeless mind in your brother by realizing that he could not have changed his mind. So when we're thinking something about someone else, and we have many opportunities to do that, we can remember about that one who seems like another one, a separate one. You could not have changed your mind, meaning the true mind we all share is our one right actual mind. And then we've imagined, kind of on the surface of this, all these separate little minds, and we're withdrawn fearfully into these separate little minds, thinking we're separate. Those don't exist. Those were imagined. So our false mind, our wrong mind, our fearful mind, that doesn't exist. It's imagined. So we're hallucinating it. That's how we could not have changed our minds. Our one true, sane, loving mind is always here for all of us. And so nobody could have changed their actual mind. Are we imagining false minds and projecting a world of strife from those false minds? We sure are. And so we have all the help in the world in allowing our perception to be healed and to show us a more direct reflection of what we all actually are together. So you are recognizing the changeless mind in your brother by realizing that he could not have changed his mind. Name the person. The person's the projection of fear on top of a fearless being. So our being is fearless, and our being we share. Our right mind is loving, and our right mind we share. And if I see that in you, you couldn't have changed your mind. We share one mind, and it's eternally sane. It's eternally joyful. It's eternally peaceful. You can't change your mind. But can I perceive that you have? Yes, I can do that. And my perception can be corrected by spirit. Paragraph 9. As you can hear two voices, so you can see in two ways. One way shows you an image or an idol that you may worship out of fear, but will never love. The other shows you only truth, which you will love because you will understand it. Understanding is appreciation because what you understand you can identify with, and by making it part of you, you have accepted it with love. That is how God himself created you, in understanding, in appreciation, and in love. The ego is totally unable to understand this because it does not understand what it makes, does not appreciate it, and does not love it. It incorporates to take away. It literally believes that every time it deprives someone of something, it has increased. I have spoken often of the increase of the kingdom by your creations, which can only be created as you were. The whole glory and perfect joy that is the kingdom lies in you to give. Do you not want to give it? When I feel good, I don't want to give it. But then when I focus back inward on what you are and what I am, then I can access a place where I do want to give this joy. Okay, one way shows you an image or an idol that you may worship out of fear, but will never love. So we learn to discern between ego's version of love, which is worshiping out of fear, and actual love, which is very expansive and never exclusive and never judgmental. So that's one of the things we're all learning together. And to compare learnings and to try to assess and evaluate learnings, this one's learned that and that one hasn't, is always a big mistake. Because then we're turning away from what we are together. So one way shows you an image or an idol that you may worship out of fear, but will never love. So it's interesting, when we believe we dislike someone, we're actually worshiping the idol. Because we're kind of kneeling in front of the idol we think they are. And whether we think we love or hate them as a body and a personality, we're just worshiping the idol. That's the fear we've projected on top of them. And if we look behind to the being, that's exactly the same as all the other beings. It's light, it's love, it's harmless, it extends forever, it's joyful, it's peaceful. And that's not an idol. It's not something I can feel one way or the other about. I'm always going to feel the same way about our shared being. And that's what the ego tries to cover up. The great love we all have for one another. I'm not talking about the ego love or ego hate we seem to have for bodies and persons and perceptions of pasts of bodies and persons. I'm talking about the actual love all the beings have for one another and can never lose. So that love is actual love, and the rest is worship. So when we feel a sense of anxiety or worry or concern, we're worshiping an idol, and we can learn to look through the surface of the idol to the actual being that is here, the changeless mind, and that helps everybody. Okay, paragraph 10. You cannot forget the Father because I am with you, and I cannot forget him. Jesus is the I. To forget me is to forget yourself and him who created you. Our brothers are forgetful. That is why they need your remembrance of me and of him who created me. Through this remembrance you can change their minds about themselves as I can change yours. Your mind is so powerful a light that you can look into theirs and enlighten them as I can enlighten yours. I do not want to share my body in communion because this is to share nothing. Would I try to share an illusion with the most holy children of a most holy Father? Yet I do want to share my mind with you because we are of one mind, and that mind is ours. See only this mind everywhere because only this is everywhere and in everything. It is everything because it encompasses all things within itself. Blessed are you who perceive only this because you perceive only what is true. And again, perceiving only this is something we're all walking each other toward. And it's an abstraction at the end of time. And when one of us, only one of us perceives only this one mind, then, and when one of us is perceiving what is true, then it immediately is communicated to all of us. So if I get up on a hill and I tell everybody, I know something you don't know, don't trust that. Trust my changeless mind instead. Because we don't even have knowledge till we return together to home, and then all knowledge is restored to us. What we have right here is guidance in walking home together. And we can all follow that together. Okay, so through this remembrance, which means your remembrance of me, that would be Jesus, and of him who created me, through this remembrance you can change their minds about themselves as I can change yours. So just through looking through the fear I projected on you, which would be the body and the person and the past I associate with the person, by looking toward your being, or if you do this for me, you can change my mind about myself. You can show me my true self. And it's not ego effort. It's just willingness. I'm willing to see you as you are. I'm willing to see your innocence. I'm willing to see your holiness. I'm willing to see what you are. And so you can change their minds about themselves as I can change yours. So Jesus can change our minds about ourselves so we can see this shared self. Through this remembrance, the remembrance of Jesus and of him who created Jesus, you can change their minds about themselves as I can change yours. So mind is the place where we work. And then the effect of working in mind is perceived as the world, as action, as speech, as persons, until all of that's done with. But while we're still not done with it, then the world can be a place that reflects the love we are back to us in a more and more perfect and powerful way. Okay. Last paragraph, paragraph 11. Come therefore unto me and learn of the truth in you. The mind we share is shared by all our brothers, and as we see them truly, they will be healed. Let your mind shine with mine upon their minds, and by our gratitude to them make them aware of the light in them. This light will shine back upon you and on the whole sonship, because this is your proper gift to God. He will accept it and give it to the sonship, because it is acceptable to him, and therefore to his sons. This is true communion with the Holy Spirit, who sees the altar of God in everyone, and by bringing it to your appreciation, he calls upon you to love God and his creation. You can appreciate the sonship only as one. This is part of the law of creation, and therefore governs all thought. So the mind we share is shared by all our brothers, and as we see them truly, they will be healed. So if I don't feel good in any way, I've forgotten the mind we share. And thank goodness I have the ability to focus back on the mind we share. And I have the ability to remember that I can see them as they truly are. And I have the ability to remember that that will bring healing. As I allow myself to see the light in them, the light will be given back to me, and that is my healing. The mind we share is shared by all our brothers, and as we see them truly, they will be healed. When I don't feel good, I don't want to see anyone or anything truly. So I have to bring it back home, and I have to know my not good feeling was caused by my unwillingness to see everyone and everything truly. And it's not my fault, it's just a condition I'm used to, because I trained my mind to turn away from the light and everyone and everything. But now this can be undone, and I can find my willingness to turn toward the light and everyone and everything, the same light that joins us all. And then this has its effect. So we're in training together, we're learning together, and we all share all the gifts we find along the way with each other, because the true communication is in mind, and we share this one mind. Okay, so thank you and happy healing.